Welcome to the Love Clarity Podcast, where you come to heal your relationship trauma and learn to love deeply without losing yourself. Hello, love, and welcome to the Love Clarity Podcast. Today, I have a special guest for you, someone whose work I've followed and admired for the way she brings truth, humor, and practical healing into the heart of marriage. Monica Tanner is a certified relationship coach and a fierce mythbuster when it comes to bad marriage advice. And she is also the host of a hit podcast, Secrets of Happily Ever After. She is now the author of the upcoming book, Bad Marriage Advice. And today, she's here to help us unlearn the scripts that keep us stuck and remember how to love each other like we mean it. So let's dive in.
Yay,
welcome, Monica.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sonia. It's so good to be here with you.
Yeah, it's wonderful to be here as well. So, Monica, one of the things that I really wanted you to share with our listeners is marriage myths that are keeping people stuck, reeling through exactly what they don't want to experience.
Yeah. I mean, so it's interesting because the idea of this book actually came from my oldest son who decided that he had met the woman of his dreams and that he was ready to get married at the tender age of 21. So I panicked a little because I was like, oh my gosh, you have so little life experience. But I don't have much of a leg to stand on because my husband and I got married just after we turned 22 and we've had a beautiful 23-year marriage so far. So, I just, as a mom, I was like, how can I prepare him for all of the things he's going to encounter, the things I've learned in 23 years of marriage, and also working with couples, who are stuck and miserable because of, the things that they believe to be true, that society and well-meaning, mentors and, marriage experts and well-meaning family and friends will say. And so, I started just writing him a note and it turned into this beautiful book with 15 pieces of bad marriage advice that I'm basically debunking and giving you a better way. So it kind of was it started as like a beginner's guide to the galaxy of marriage, but also a cautionary tale, like look out for this advice because it sounds really great. And I'm certain whoever said it to you had the best of intentions, but it will actually cause a lot of pain in the long run.
Yes. And it's such a great motivation to have your son to give this to. And he's so lucky. One of the things I'll say, because I have been listening to your work, I've been following you, is that your work, I don't think is just for marriages. Because anybody, and I'm talking about like a little kid, like a 14-year-old, anybody who listens to what you're going to share with us today, I feel like these are myths that I hope with your work, with the work that I'm doing in the world, they become so common that anybody on the street is like, okay, no, this is a myth. It's not real. It's not true. So in a way, you're coming into the world, changing culture around relationships and wanting to create something that is healthy that anybody can use.
Yeah. The greatest thing about relational skills is you're right. All relationships benefit from healthy relational skills, right? So whether you're talking to your children or your coworker, your best friend, or your neighbor down the street, your in-laws, like whoever you're talking to, being skillful in relationships is going to be super helpful. It just so happens that in romantic relationships, it kind of gets compounded, and a lot of times there's higher stakes when you're using outdated relational skills, and they're really not taught anywhere. But the cool thing is that it's not like you're born with it or not. Like relationship is a skill set, just like learning a sport or how to play an instrument. It's something that you learn, you practice, and you get better at with time.
Okay, wonderful. And I'm going to ask you to tap into skills in a minute, but I really want to hear about these myths. Can you tell us, can you start with a myth that you feel would be really helpful for our audience?
Yeah. So, I mean, just knowing a little bit about you and your background, you'll have to tell me. But when I polled my audience, literally the most common piece of bad marriage advice that people said that they received when they first got married was this idea of happy wife, happy life.
Okay, so say more.
Yeah. So, I mean, if on the outset, it's kind of a cool idea as a wife. I'm like, yeah, I mean, of course, your
Sign me
whole
up for
job
that.
should be to make me happy. Like, what, yeah, well, what could be wrong with that? But really, when you dig into it, it's a lot of responsibility for the wife to kind of hold the emotional, thermostat for the relationship. Like, if I'm not happy, well, then shoot, everybody better bend over and figure out how to do it. It's also kind of a dig at the wife, like if she's not happy, she's going to be nagging, she's going to be sad. Then no, if mom's not happy, nobody's happy. It's kind of like these ideas that it creates a lot of responsibility for the person who needs to be happy, but it's also, such a crazy idea to think that a relationship between two people should hinge upon the happiness of one over the other. And so, when we talk about relational skills and relational mindfulness and relational health, it's really where both couples are able to show up in the relationship, be able to communicate their wants, needs, and desires, and make space for both of you. So if one partner is consistently acquiescing to the other partner and they're not really getting their needs met, it's going to create a lot of distance. It's going to create resentment. And eventually it's going to create disillusionment. And, one partner might walk away and be like, well, my needs don't matter in this relationship. So what's the point? Right. So, really it can be very destructive if you follow that. And it's like this funny idea that I see on social media. There's some guy walking around with a microphone, finding older couples walking around, and he's always like, what's the key to happiness in a long-term relationship? And, the guy's always like, well, she's the boss, she wears the pants. If she's not happy, nobody's happy, like we, people smile and they're like, oh, how cute. But in reality, I like to say happy spouse, happy house. So let's consider both partners' happiness and how we can make room for both of them.
Yes, that's beautiful, Monica. So when you were speaking about the myth, I was thinking that if you take this away from the wives, like it was going to be like a loss for them. Like, oh my God, so now I don't have to be like, you're not going to care about me. Like I really like that, oh, happy wife, happy life. So you're giving me priority. And I loved that when you started speaking about this, you started with pointing out how this is not helpful for a woman to have this, how this type of thing is a pressure that actually brings a woman down. How when you say that happy wife, happy life, you're I'm thinking you're giving her a medal, a little trophy, a little award. But here it's you're illuminating how that can actually be something that can make it heavy, that can create problems that may not exist. So wonderful. That was beautiful that you said. And I'm so happy that you gave us an alternative to this happy life, happy wife, the happy spouse, happy house. That's wonderful. And I do resonate with what you're saying, that this can be very confusing, that, hey, how do we manage this thing where, this is such a culture that's been set. And how do you come away from that and understand that you could actually be happy? And many times we don't understand that relationships, when we're getting into relationships, we are being called to healing. We're being called to being challenged by the other person, being challenged in the relationships. And the pain that comes up in the relationship is actually very helpful for the healing of each individual and the couple together. And so when you say something like that, it's almost like you erase the most gorgeous point of evolution that every relationship has.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. So I work with a lot of men who kind of cling to this idea of happy wife, happy life, like somebody in their life. A lot of times it's their dad. or their father-in-law, or, somebody who was really important to them, who at some point said, if you want to make this work, make sure your wife is happy, right? And so, like, what's tough about that is, like, I have to tell them, if your wife is unhappy, that's not necessarily your fault or your responsibility to fix, right? Most people are going to have negative emotions half the time. And it's really important to teach individuals that other people are not responsible for your emotions, right? If I'm unhappy, I'm making myself unhappy. I'm choosing to be unhappy, right? And the only person that can really fix that is me. And so, when you put the responsibility on a husband to make sure that a wife is happy,
Yeah.
already you have a recipe for disaster. But at the same time, too, you want husbands to understand that if you're constantly submissive, if you're constantly putting your opinions, ideas, preferences beneath somebody else, eventually that's going to come out sideways, whether it's passive aggressive or withdrawal or, just general discontent. And so I really, there's a lot of skills to being able to make requests and to be able to hold, what the wife wants as at the same time and at the same level as what the husband wants.
Okay. So I'm going to ask you about one of those skills in one
Yeah.
second, but I know that when people are listening to you, they're going to be like, no, what do you mean? What do you mean that I made myself unhappy? I was in this room, I was sitting just fine, and this one came and he did this to me or she did this to me. And before they came, I wasn't unhappy. So now I'm unhappy. So how are you saying that, no, I didn't make myself unhappy? So how do you answer that?
Yeah. Wow. This is a great, great, great lesson. And like something really to understand is because it's not the action that this one came and did to you. It's the story you're telling yourself about what that action meant to you. Right. And so there's there's circumstances and there's experiences. And so the one thing that I talk about a lot was probably eventually be my next book is these laws of connection. And the second law of connection is it's basically you're responsible for the experience you're having, regardless of the circumstance. And it's an idea that was formed around Viktor Frankl and the work that he did. And he was a Holocaust survivor and basically was in the worst situation that any human could possibly. He was stripped of anything that gave him dignity, his family, his clothing, his free will, everything, right? But you couldn't take away from him the ability to choose the experience he was having, right? And so he created logotherapy and everything around that. So you can take two individuals in the same exact circumstance, and they can be having very different experiences. So we can't choose our circumstances all the time, but we can always choose how we feel about it, the story we're telling about it, the thoughts we're having. So, we can give examples, we can go into this. You can give me an example from your own life and we can talk about it. But that should help is you choose the thoughts that you're having and the story you're telling about anything that happens. You can, two wives can have husbands that do the same exact action, and one wife can be sad about it and one wife can celebrate it. It's really the story we tell about the action.
And when you say this, one of the things I struggle with when I'm working with my clients and I'm asking them to take responsibility for their emotions and for what they want to create in their life, one of the biggest issues that I come upon is this, that generally speaking, this is a person and that person is having this issue because of the amount of responsibility they take. And many times the way they're taking responsibility is weighing them down, which tells me right away that it's not responsibility, is blame. So when you start to say to them that, by the way, you have to take responsibility for your own emotions, they're just going to curl up and be like, okay, are you kidding me? Like, I came here to be relieved. And now you're going to tell me I got to take responsibility of my emotions, because this whole time I'm taking the responsibility of this one and this one and this one. So how do you work with that?
Yeah. Well, that goes to my first law of connection, where the only person in the entire universe that you have any control over is you, right? And so a lot of us try to control things that are outside of our control. Like, I mean, naturally, we can't control the weather. We can't control the economy. We can't control whether a sports team wins or loses. But we think that we can control our children, our spouse, our mother-in-law, right? And we try really hard. And it's very exhausting to try and control the actions, thoughts, opinions of the people around us, right? And so a lot of times it's just a matter of helping people see what they're trying to control in their universe versus like what's happening in their universe, what other people are doing, and where their actual efficacy is. So, if my husband is drinking a lot, I think that I might be able to control that by like my actions, or if I'm guilt tripping, or if there's alcohol available. Like, there's a lot of things that I might think that I have control over, but I really can't control anything except for my actions, the boundaries that maybe I'm setting around this, the thoughts that I'm having, the things I'm choosing to believe about him, about me, about our relationship. Those are the things I can control, not whether or not he's going to drink.
Yeah. And so if we take your example of, the husband that's drinking, these people who will complain about, they are doing a lot. They're not sitting on their hands, and but all of their control is that, how do I make this person not drink? So what you're directing people to is that, go ahead and do the effort that you're doing. Don't sit there on your hands, but all of the change that needs to happen, it's going to happen within you, where you have your locus of control, where you have your ability to be able to change something. So that's the
Yeah.
shift that you're making. And you were mentioning that there's a lot of skills that are required. What skills can you give us for this particular scenario, for example?
Yeah. Well, I think one of the most important skills, especially for young, married couples, but anyone in any type of a relationship, is the skill of making requests. So there's three kind of main steps to this skill of making requests. But before we start, you have to remember love, which is my very favorite thing to consider. Remember that the person you're talking to is somebody that you love. If you're married to them, somebody that you live with, but maybe it's a mother-in-law, maybe it's a coworker or something. But remember that this is somebody that you care about. And two, remember that the reason why you're speaking is to make things better for both of you, right? You're putting yourself on the same team with them. So that's what I call remembering love. So all of these things, these three steps, when you first consider remembering love, is really, really important. And here's what most people will do. Most people will just walk through life complaining about what they don't like or what they're not getting. So maybe my spouse doesn't help clean up after dinner. And so I'm just going to call my girlfriend and I'm going to be like, it's so frustrating. It's always me cleaning up after dinner, after I cooked the whole meal and, helped everybody get the things that they wanted. And then, my husband goes and puts his feet up on the couch and I'm cleaning up the kitchen, right? So, yeah. And managing the kids and doing bedtime. And we're going to complain about that. That's what most of us do. But remember that underneath every complaint, there's always a request. So what's my actual request is that my husband help clean up the dishes after I've cooked dinner and now I have the kids to deal with, right? So instead of complaining, find the request. And number one, so the first step in making a request is finding the request and be willing to rock the boat. Like, maybe I think if I bring this up to my husband, he's not going to like it. But obviously nothing, not bringing it up. How's that going for you, right?
Yeah,
complaining to all of your friends
good
about
motivation. How's that going for you?
Exactly. So you've got to be willing to bring it up. figure out what your request is and be willing to rock the boat. That's step one. Step two, as I say, is make it stupidly simple for somebody to do the thing you're asking them to do. So if I were to go to my husband and say, you never help around the house, like, can you just help? Or we never have sex, or like whatever this
Like a
request is.
general thing. Make
Exactly.
it specific.
Exactly. If we make it specific, behavioral, and time bound, the odds of actually getting what we want are way higher. So, hey, husband, first, I would first contract. I would first like, hey, is now a good, I have a request. Is now a good time? Like, cause you don't want to ambush them when they're just getting home from work and they're hungry and they're tired, or they're in the middle of a project and they're not really listening to you. So find a good time. But then it's good. Hey, husband, I noticed that after we have dinner, you go and sit on the couch and put your feet up, and there's still so much to do. So I want to make a request that you clean up after dinner. So wipe like clear the table, do the dishes, get them in the dishwasher, and wipe off the counters 3 times a week. If you can help me out 3 times a week, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, that would be amazing. Now you've been really specific. Here are the things I would love for you to help me with. Here's the time, and here's what it would look like, right? Okay, so bonus points if you add to the end of that, what can I do to make it easier for you to fulfill this request for me? And maybe he'll say, oh, if you just remind me, if you notice I go to the family room and put my feet up, if you'll just say, hey, honey, remember you're cleaning the kitchen tonight, like that would be super helpful. Or if, you would take the kids out for bath time so that I could clean up the kitchen, that would be super helpful. If you send me a text beforehand, whatever, that would be super helpful, right? So help them win. Do what you can do. Why? Why do we have to go through the trouble to help them win? Because if they're doing what you ask them to do, you both win. So that's step 2. And step 3 is to really appreciate any type of progress. So say the next week, your partner actually cleans up the kitchen on Tuesday, but on Wednesday forgets, and on Thursday he only does it like halfway. You want to recognize that progress. Any progress is good progress. Hey, husband, I really, really, really appreciate you cleaning up the dishes on Tuesday. That was so helpful. I noticed on Wednesday nobody got to the dishes, and Thursday it was only like half done. Like, what can we do to like help you remember to do it all 3 nights, right? Appreciate the progress. Nobody likes to be told you screwed this up. You weren't good enough, right? But if you can say, hey, I really appreciate what happened here. How can we get like a little bit more of it? You're going to do so much better. And then I like to tell people, so that's making a request. I like to say at the end of this, keep micro disappointments micro. So if we were to look at this scenario and be like, well, my husband is super lazy. He did it on Tuesday, but then, he dropped the ball for the rest of the week. This is what he always does. He's such a lazy bum, right? We've created this huge problem out of really a micro disappointment that on Wednesday the dishes didn't get done. And that was disappointing, but we can work with that. So, once we make a mountain out of a molehill, it gets overwhelming. We start characterologically, destroying our relationship. But if we can just say, you know what, man, that was such a bummer that on Wednesday the dishes didn't get done. I really hope that we can keep improving upon this.
Yes.
That's
And if you're doing
the skill of making requests.
Absolutely. That's a beautiful skill that you've taught. And I love that you have these 3 steps. And if you're doing the first part of what you said, where you are relieving yourself of the responsibility of everyone else's emotions, then you have emotional capacity and you have emotional energy to be able to soothe yourself when you're feeling disappointed about the Wednesday dishes not being done.
Yeah. And the other thing that's really cool is one of my very first clients that I ever worked with like 6 years ago had this same problem. Like they had kind of made an agreement really early on in their marriage that she would cook because she loved doing it and he would clean up, right? But as they, their relationship matured, they started having children, he changed jobs. Like she was so upset because he wasn't holding up his part of the bargain. And while she just stayed upset about it and stewed about it, she didn't have, like you said, the mental capacity to try to problem solve around it. And so, once we worked together for a little while and she was like, you know what? He's not going to be able to do the dishes. And like, what else can we do to solve this problem? We figured out like she could hire a teenager down the street to come in a couple nights a week, clean up the kitchen while she did bath time and got the kids ready for bed. And it cost her maybe a few dollars.
Yes. But what about the woman who's going to say, okay, fine, I know I can pay for it, but he needs to suffer too. Like do you see what I'm saying, Monica?
Yeah, you've got to examine that. Like, well, what's your motivation there, right? Are you trying to solve the problem or are you trying to retaliate against?
I feel like maybe it's like this whole thing that people do where it has to be equal, where instead of complementary, it has to be equal.
Yeah, we've got to find the root cause of that, right? Yeah. But the problem that needs to be solved is she's feeling overwhelmed because there's a lot of work to be done. Mm-hmm. But what happened with this couple specifically is her husband, after, a few weeks was like, why is, so-and-so from down the street coming over several times a week when I could just be doing the dishes? And she's like, oh, well, if you want to do it, you are welcome to do the dishes. But I was having to solve a problem, which was that I had too much to do in the evenings to be able to relax and enjoy myself, right? And so he was like, oh, that's silly. I'll just do the dishes. Problem solved.
Yeah. And it's really cool also to examine, like, for example, if some client does say, well, but then he's going to get off scot-free and he already gets to travel and have all this time. So it's very good to examine that. What is the problem really about? Is the problem that you are still stuck in wanting to do the scale of the equal? Or is it that maybe you are feeling like maybe that was a time that you just wanted him in the kitchen while you were in the kitchen and you were getting attention that way? Maybe is it that you would like to, your love language is acts of service, and what other act of service can he do? So it's really helpful to open those conversations. But I heard you say that even if it's hard for you, have that conversation.
Oh, yes. Having hard conversations is really important, and learning how to do it skillfully as well is very important. But it's interesting because you bring up, I haven't talked about the laws of connection in a really long time, but you bring up the third law of connection, which is it basically, your brain is really good at solving problems. And sometimes we just let our brain on autopilot solve problems when we can actually control what problems we're solving. So for this couple in particular, the problem is like, how are we going to get the dishes done? That's a good problem versus like, I'm feeling unseen. I'm feeling unloved. I'm feeling like my husband gets to do whatever the heck he wants, right? Like, what problem are we actually trying to solve?
Absolutely. Monica, you have so much to share, and I'd love it if we can go through one more myth. What do you think? You think maybe
Absolutely.
Let's try one more myth.
Yeah. Is there one in particular? I'm trying to remember what we talked about before.
There was, just tell me the one that you feel really resonates with people the most, the one that you love to talk about.
I mean, one of the myths I love to talk about is this idea of compromise, because I also, or don't sweat the small stuff. I think that was one.
Okay, let's do this. Don't sweat the small stuff.
Because that goes really well with making requests.
Yes.
So, don't sweat the small stuff makes a lot of sense if you think about it logically, right? Like, and people say it as a cliche all the time, like meaning like,
I think there's a book, Don't Sweat the Small Stuff.
There probably is, and I should read it just for fun, right? Like it sounds like, oh yeah, don't sweat the small stuff, but where do you think the big stuff comes from? It starts small. So do you want to deal with it as a seed, or do you want to deal with it when it's a weed choking out all of the love and respect and generosity that's in your relationship, right? And so learning how to skillfully make requests when the problem is small is really going to save you a lot of heartache in the long run. Because, don't make a mountain out of a molehill. Don't bring up everything. Choose your battles. Like, you hear all that stuff and it sounds good. It
Yeah.
does. But if I stuff it down and I don't sweat it, eventually it's going to come out sideways. Why? Because our feelings don't just live inside of us. They have to come out somehow. So either we bring it up skillfully when it's just a little thing, or we let it stew and fester and take us over and overwhelm us. And then we're passive aggressive and resentful, and it comes out in all kinds of sideways.
Yes. And I can totally see this, like in myself, even. I can see it that, I'd be like, okay, I'd let this go. I'd let this go because it's small stuff and small stuff. And by the time you're speaking about it, it doesn't feel like small stuff.
Okay,
And
you're like all pissed off.
yeah, your energy is so aggressive that, sometimes when we are being that way, we actually can't notice how aggressive we're being. We may go to a therapist and say, "Hey, I just said it so nicely," and then the husband's like, "Oh, she almost ate my head," but it took my head off. But when you're doing this titrating, that you're saying the small stuff, you can actually preface it, like you were saying, by saying something like, "Hey, listen, it's really small. I don't want this to get out of hand," because you probably have seen the monster in you, the monster in the other person. And you're like, "Listen, I don't want this to get bigger. And I just want to, like, it's not a big deal right now. And I want to be able to say it in a way that it's not a big deal. And so this happened, and I'm bringing this to you. And so we can brainstorm it together."
Yes. Let me give you an example from my own marriage. It's very real. And I bet a lot of your listeners can relate to this. So a lot of the work that I do is online on social media, right? And so it took me a long time to really learn the ins and outs of Instagram and TikTok. And way back in the day, we had Clubhouse, and learning how to be able to do my work online, but disconnect from it. And so what would happen is I was spending a lot of time on my phone, and about maybe once a month, my husband would just erupt. Like, he was so mad at me, and like we would just not talk for days. Right. And it was just like, it seemed like something was small, but it just like festered inside of him until he couldn't handle it anymore. And he would just explode about something. And it was kind of scary, not gonna lie. Right. And so we started to unpack it. I was like, I've noticed that maybe once a month you freak out. Like, what is this about? Right. And he's just like, you're always on your phone. You're not available. He would come in and be like, would you like to participate in our family? Right. He would just be very upset. And so I was like, oh, so what I'm hearing is you feel like I spend too much time on my phone. And so, like you said, we started to brainstorm about it, and how can we he's like, yeah, if you ask the kids, they'll agree with me. La, la, la. I mean, just launching this attack on me. And I get it. I was on my phone a lot, but I didn't realize the impact it was having on the people around me. And so we came up with this PUFID, put your phone down. I need your attention. And so now in my family, if anyone's on their phone, and I have a house full of teenagers, so everyone's on their phone, right? And so if I walk into the kitchen and I want to talk to my daughter and she's on her phone, I'll just say PUFID. And she's like, oh, mom needs to talk to me, right? Mm-hmm. Same with me. If I'm in the kitchen working on something and I happen to be scrolling through my phone, and my husband comes home and wants my attention, he's like, PUFID. And I'm like, oh, yes, of course. Hold on, let me finish what I'm doing, and then I will give you my full undivided attention. It completely solved the problem. It was an easy solution to something. If we had talked about it when it was a small thing, it wouldn't have been so painful as when it got so out of hand. It was really choking out kind of the love and respect and generosity that was in our relationship. But once we got it solved, awesome.
Amazing. That's so beautiful. And I really love the demonstration that you just did of two people being against each other and then getting on the same side of the table, putting the argument, the disagreement on the other side, and working together for the mutual good.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. So,
Thank you.
Monica, I know that you're writing a book. You've told us about these 15 myths that you have in there. You tell us more about, can you get us excited about why we should buy this book? Of course, I'm going to buy the book and I'm going to read it. And I'm so excited. I'm so happy for you. But I want to know, what should we look forward to?
Yeah, I appreciate that so much. I mean, I think my prayer for the book is really just I want anyone who reads it to be able to put it down and feel so much hope. Like, oh, like I want them to have experiences where they laugh, where they, where they relate, where they're like, oh my gosh, yes, I remember like doing that or hearing that, or, oh, yes, I am really committed to this, advice. And yeah, maybe it's not really serving our relationship, but like each chapter has like a here's how to do it better. And so it's not a hard read. It's like super quick, kind of reference style, like funny stories all throughout it. And I hope that a couple will just get the book, keep it on their nightstand, give it away to other couples that they love, and just be able to return to it when they're having a problem. Like, man, I really am sweating this thing. Like, how do I bring it up, right? Or how do I make this request? Or, like, why do I feel so much like I have to make my wife happy? Like, whatever it is, we all struggle with these things and we all hear them all the time. And so I really hope that couples will put the book down and just feel hopeful and happy and know that happily ever after is really possible.
Yes, I really, and thank you, Monica, for writing a book that's so referenceable. That's, you're going through your busy life. You don't have the time to read like a, 400-page book. And I bet that, it's going to be so easy to find exactly what you're like, oh, wait, what is this myth? And I love that. Thank you, Monica, so much for sharing your heart, your wisdom, and your fierce love for helping
Hmm.
couples. I can feel it when I'm with you in your presence, helping these couples thrive, not survive. And to our listeners, if something in today's conversation with Monica stirred something in you, follow Monica at monicatanner.com. That's Monica, TANNER.com. Grab a spot on the wait list that she has over there for her book, and check out her new podcast. I mean, it's not a new podcast. It's a gorgeous developed podcast called Secrets of Happily Ever After. Did I get that right?
You did. Thank you
Secrets of
so
Happily Ever
much. I
After. And
appreciate you
you're
sending people my way.
if you're walking through relationship crossroads, remember this. You can choose love that feels safe. You can choose connection, as Monica has demonstrated to us, that doesn't cost you yourself. Monica, any ending notes that you'd like to say to everybody?
I think this like a final thought is
Yes.
that have the courage to ask for help when you need it. It's definitely not a weakness. It's a sign of commitment and strength to be able to ask for help. And so, there's wonderful people out in the world like Sonia, like me, who are committed and have learned and trained to be able to help you through like the difficult challenges that we all face. So know that you're not alone and know that there is help.
That's wonderful, Monica. I really love that you shared that. And everything that you shared was so practical. And I feel like our listeners can just launch right after they listen to the episode, while they're listening to this episode, and start to improve their relationships. Thank you for being here. Thank you for our time. And for everyone out there who's going to benefit from this, until next time, stay rooted in love and in clarity.